This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro. And today I want to give us an update on the stock market and discuss whether we've made a bottom or not, or what to look for if we are making a bottom. I think there are a few things I think we can key on that might give us a little bit more confidence. So let's go ahead and get into the charts. I like to start with the S&P using the spider. And I obviously like to focus in on the monthly chart to start because this has been kind of in control. We got extended away from this monthly line, and then to start the new year, it started to correct, and we've worked our way back to this 18-month line. Now, this is 2 times in a row now we've come down and touched this line and tried to bounce off of it. I think the respect for that line is there. The question is, are the buyers going to be strong enough to really flip this thing around? And one of the things that really is kind of bugging me right now is this weekly Adx pattern. This is not the type of pattern that I would expect at a bottom. I mean, we've got a strong blue line. The ADX line is rising at 30. Pretty nice slope to it. And the red DI is still making higher highs here. We've got green DI making another lower low. So, I mean, I'm not saying that it can't make an important bottom and just take off. I mean, it's possible, but I think it's a very, very low probability. A few things that really are attractive or have me feeling a little bit more confident. As I mentioned, we're sitting at the 18-month. We've tested it twice. We've built up some tails here. So every time this has come down, we have seen some buyers step in. But I think based on what I'm seeing in the ADX, what I would expect to take place is if we do rally, we have some issues at this declining 18-week line. So wherever that ends up being when we rally, I think that's going to cause some issues, and it could play out if it's a really strong rally, maybe it tries to push through that line, but then I still think it's going to come back and have to cup around. If it rallies up and fails, then we're going to have to see what kind of sellers we have on the next go round, on the next decline. And if this can come back up and survive these lows, make a higher bottom, and then turn back up through the line, then that could be looking attractive. But the odds of just taking off and moving up with this kind of look, even though we're sitting at the MACD zero line, just looking at that ADX pattern just doesn't appeal to me. Now, I mean, if you want to do it, we have more bears than bulls. We're at -3% in the bull-bear spread. That's a very bullish backdrop. Okay, I mean, I like having that. But just to give you an idea, in 2008, we got down to -25%. So just because we go negative doesn't mean we have a buy signal. Okay, it's not an automatic buy when that happens. I do like the tails that are starting to form. And as I've said, when I see this type of stuff, then I want to go down to the smaller time frames and look for signs that maybe there's a turn. So the way to look at this, I think, is to give this trade a chance potentially, but then have a quick trigger finger if it doesn't follow through. Now, I wouldn't do it yet. I would be waiting for a little bit more confirmation. And one of the things I'm watching for, if I look at a daily chart, so we can go and we can look at the price making these lower tops, okay? But more important to me right now is the green DI is making lower tops as well. Okay, we haven't made a turn in this line, and I think we're going to need to see a higher high in the buyers. If we want the market to go up, the buyers have to strengthen. It's almost more important than the sellers right now. We need to see enough strength in the buyers for it to make a higher high. I would like to see that confirmed by a price higher high as well, or coming up through this peak. But more important, I think, would be breaking the downtrend line, getting through the 18-day, and breaking the downtrend line. I think you could draw in this trend line like that and look at that. It looks basically the same as the 18-day. It's the same slope. If we can get through that line, preferably with a big monster green bar right? And we get green DI showing up and breaking out here. Now I feel like I got to give this a chance, right? To at least work its way up towards this the midpoint of this decline and get a much better rally than what we've seen. Now, possibly it'll go through there. And, I might sound pretty wishy-washy here, but I got to tell you, I mean, right now, I think we've been following this and I think we've been seeing it correctly. When it got extended, the probabilities were it was going to pull back. I said that was where you'd cover, but not where you buy. Okay, if you got short, you would have used that as a covering spot, which was a good spot to take profits right at the 18 on the monthly. Now, I'm still waiting for the buying opportunity, and I'd be willing to play that up to this 18 week, and then I'm going to evaluate what it would look like at the 18 week. I'm not really wanting to be all that aggressive just based on what I'm seeing here. I don't really want to jump the gun at all. And I'm going to need to see a little bit more confirmation, preferably like to see a really good day here that should show up with positive green DI on the hourly chart, holding and turning back up. So we moved up here, but then it didn't really hold, right? And so we're looking for that 1, 2, 3 pattern. You could argue that if we came up through this high here, that you have a 1, 2, 3, but look at what's missing. We don't have green DI at all. So this would be an aggressive entry coming up through 430. I mean, you could do it, but you also want to use 420 as your stop, and if it turns down, you just take yourself out. So I would personally wait to see a little bit better green DI on a crossover or something like that. If that can take place, then you could buy the next higher low, something along those lines. But we're in the area where we're looking for a turn. We just don't have enough evidence, and I don't like the looks of this ADX on the weekly, so I'm being a little bit more cautious about any kind of new buying right now. Let's look at the QQQ. Now, I mean, this has been, I think, under a lot more pressure. It is still below the 18-month line. It's getting a little bit too comfortable below this line. I mean, if you notice here in this last month, it dropped down below and it got right back above really quickly. This time we're spending a little bit, this is the second week below this line. And that line is starting to lose a little slope. I mean, let's look at this. You see how that line was rising and now it's starting to lose a little bit of slope. So I think what that's telling me is this MACD has rolled over, and that even if we go up, we're going to run into problems, and it's got to do some more sideways action as opposed to just going straight up. That's how I would be looking at it. I think that's the highest probability here. This has the same problem with the ADX. Look at this ADX rising, and look at the red DI. I mean, let's look at this pretty close. Look at the red DI continues to make higher highs and higher lows. Green DI is making lower lows and lower highs. I mean, that's just not the picture of quality of a bottom where I'd say, wow, we've got a real good setup on our hands. Now, it doesn't mean you can't rally from this position. And this is the same thing. We're looking for buyers to show up on the daily chart, make a higher high. And if that happens, then we should be able to work our way up towards the 18-week. But now that 18-week has rolled over, we have negative ADX on this time frame, we have to sort of assume that's going to be resistance at that line. Just like I'm sort of the opinion that because the ADX is decent here, that this area around the 18 is going to provide support, especially where the S&P is concerned. But in both cases, it looks like they at least wants to try and attempt to rally. So go down to your smaller time frames, look for green DI to show up, look for the green DI to make a higher high here. I don't really think it's worth jumping the gun here. I just don't see it. I don't think there's enough evidence yet. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is look at the Russell 2000. I mean, if the Russell, and we can go and look at the ADX in this time frame. This MACD is even worse. We have the same rollover on the MACD on the monthly chart. We have clear overrun of this 18-month line, and we've got price resistance up here. So with all those issues in place, Typically, if we're going to move, we should see improvement in the Russell 2000. It doesn't mean that it has to play out that way, but I would say, more often than not, that's the way it's going to play out. We'd see some improvement here, and it's just not happening yet. So we can go and look at a couple commodities. Did make a top in oil, at least in the near term. I mean, that got really overdone, very newsy event. I do think there were people taking profits here. I would imagine now this is going to take some time to consolidate. Gold also has made a pretty nice move. And if you look at this weekly chart, I mean, this is a nice base breakout, but it got up against this old high. I like what's going on in the Adx pattern here. This is actually very bullish, but we had a strong buy bar to end a move, and then we had a big red bar to kind of reverse it. So, I mean, I think what we've got is some form of climax that's formed, a short-term climax, not a big one, but a short-term one that probably causes us to consolidate a little bit, take some time off, let the moving averages on the weekly chart catch up a little bit. One thing I wanted to mention is this 10-year Treasury continues to show pretty good strength. ADX, MACD, holding the 18-week, all the weekly trends are in place here. And I think the next target is up around 2.25. Bitcoin is still struggling. I mean, this had this failed breakout and then a really harsh decline. And we've got contraction going on in the DI lines on the monthly chart. We've got MACD rolling through its signal line on the monthly chart. We have overrun on the weekly. I mean, there's just not a lot to hang our hat on right now. I think the first thing we could look for is coming up through this resistance level up here. And if it can do that and show some green DI, show some volume, show a little bit of strength, then you'd be working your way back up through the 18-week. And then we could start taking this a little bit more seriously. But don't let these little moves that are taking place right now get you jumping around. I know they're big price moves. It's a high-priced instrument. You get these big green bars and get you all excited. But right now, we're still consolidating in this trend, and it really hasn't proven that it's held these lows yet. So at this point, I think we still have to stay on the conservative side on a lot of this stuff and wait for some more convincing evidence. Okay, so that's the update for the week. Go ahead and post any questions or comments. Thanks.